Hello, art appreciation students. My name is Tom Chung. I run the painting program with the Fine Art Department at UAA. I'm here today to talk to you about my art practice and how it relates to some general themes in the fine arts. The first piece I want to talk about today is titled Mother Nature Does Not Love You, and it's owned by the Anchorage Museum. And I wanted to bring up this piece in relation to the idea that fine art can be used to convey difficult ideas. And I think that it's particularly relevant with this painting because my intention with it seems to be quite different from what viewers interpret from the piece. So my idea with this painting was to express and exercise the Western mainstream idea that mankind is in opposition with nature, that mankind is in conflict with nature and is threatened by nature and needs to defend him or herself. This is in contrast to, say, the Chinese Taoist belief that man and everything that man makes is an extension of nature. So even though that was my intention in creating the work, I hear back from museum goers that think that the painting is really disrespectful, that they think that I hate polar bears or I hate nature. And and I'm okay with the misreadings of the work because I believe that artwork should be considered as visual poetry. And I think that the strongest artwork that I know are open-ended, which means that the artist is asking a question of the viewer more than they are supplying an answer. So the second topic that I wanted to talk about today is emotions in art. And the painting that I have for you here to introduce it is maybe one of the first paintings that I ever made. I made this painting when I was 17, and I wanted to present it to talk to you about why I make art, because every artist makes art for a different reason. And my artwork can be thought of closer to a meditation or a prayer, more than a commodifiable object for sale or a decorative object for display. Um, this painting was made out of self-preservation. Artwork has always functioned as catharsis for me, emotional catharsis. And it's interesting because a painting like this, even if nobody ever saw it, it still does what it needs to do. Just the act of getting those emotions onto canvas is incredibly healing, regardless of whether or not anybody ever sees them or not. So when I made this painting, I was 17 and I was facing the fact that I was gay for the first time. And what that meant was accepting that I could never be who my society wanted me to be. I could never be who my family wanted me to be. And I couldn't even be who I wanted me to be. And this painting was a way for me to get those emotions out at a time when I was having a very hard time. And my paintings still function like this for me, that they function as these psychological exorcisms almost, that once I have the idea out onto a physical object, it no longer occupies the same sort of space in my mind. This is another piece that I think captures a lot of strong emotions within my artwork. This is a painting I made when I was an undergrad. And I think that it communicates the emotions that I was feeling in relation to racism in the gay community. I was really disillusioned at the time to find that there was more racism in the gay community than the straight community, and I was finding studies that verified my experience. This painting also holds a lot of the psychological complexities of sexuality that I was facing and dealing with at the time as well. One thing I think is interesting about artwork is even if you don't understand everything about what the artist is explaining to you in terms of a narrative, oftentimes you can feel if a piece is true or not. You can feel the impact of a piece even if you don't understand it. And I think it's because artwork does such a good job at communicating things beyond what could be articulated in the written word. This is a more recent piece that I think also holds a lot of strong emotion for me. I made this painting after a man was apprehended trying to assemble an assault rifle in the library down the street from where I teach. I have a lot of anxiety as an educator about mass shootings, and this is what I expressed in this painting. The figure comes from white supremacist propaganda. So the next topic that I wanted to talk about in relation to my art is the idea of informed justice, that artwork can be used to raise awareness and further causes of social and societal justice. So this is my painting titled The End of Everything. It is also owned by the Anchorage Museum. And whenever this piece goes out on display, it will have an accompanying artist note. And the artist note that goes with this painting describes that the text on the polar bear that says "it's okay to be white" comes from posters that white supremacists put up around UAA as part of a national campaign a few years ago. And I think it's really important as a society as we move forward to not forget what has happened as we're working out how to live together and how to find equity amongst such a diverse group of peoples here. So I'm glad that that note will always sort of raise awareness of the situation that we've been dealing with at this time. An interesting experience happened to me with this painting as well when it was up during my museum exhibition. There was a middle-aged white woman that came up to me and asked what the issue was with the Cleveland Indians logo, what the issue was with the Redskins logo. Because at the top of this painting, there's a lot of racist cartoon faces that I pulled from various sources. And I asked the woman to just stand in front of the painting and spend some time with it and consider, would you want your people represented by that cartoon? Would you want your family thought of as a one-dimensional stereotype? Would you want to be seen as less than human? And I'm glad that the painting was able to generate a conversation like that. And I don't shy away from putting in loaded symbols because these symbols exist in the world. There's a very psychological reality, and there's a very, factual reality that these negative things, they exist in the world, and me putting them in a painting isn't sort of creating them. It's raising awareness of something that I think is still important to think about. So this is an image of Mickey Rooney. It's a screenshot from a movie created in 1961, Breakfast at Tiffany's, where a white actor is in yellowface. And my dad, when he was growing up, most of the times when he saw depictions of Asian men, they were like this. And as a result, he hated being Chinese. And what's interesting is the racist stereotype of the desexualized Asian male. It has its origin in history. The first waves of Chinese immigrants were exclusively male, pretty much, and they came to work on the railroads. They were seen as threatening because they were mostly male. And so the stereotypes cropped up that tried to dehumanize and desexualize them. And we still live with the vestiges of those stereotypes today. So when my dad was growing up in the 60s, they were really quite explicit. When I was growing up in the 90s, they were no longer putting white actors into yellowface as much, but they were casting people that looked exactly like the stereotypes in order to further those stereotypes. So this was a painting that I made in undergrad to address the Asian male stereotype. And what I did was I thought about all of the popular culture places where you would think of an Asian male, and I attempted to hypersexualize them because the largest stereotype against the Asian male is desexualization. There was a study that I came across when I made this painting that came out from Columbia University that said that in America at the time, in 2006, the Asian male was the least desirable dating partner for every single racial category that took the survey, including Asian males and females. Um, So this painting represents my hypersexualization of the image of Buddha or of monks, because that's one place in popular culture where the Asian male does appear. So the idea with a painting like this would be that if you saw this painting where I'm giving a lap dance dressed as Buddha in a strip club, if you see a Buddha later or an image of a monk, you may remember this hypersexualized painting and it might help to overwrite the stereotype. That was the intention with this piece that was aimed towards justice, basically by dismantling the stereotype. The last topic that I wanted to talk about today is the idea of inclusion versus exclusion. And I wanted to talk about this both in art and in society. So this is an image of my dad's side of the family, and my grandpa was an engineer, but nobody would give him a job in America because he was Chinese. So he had to open a laundromat. And largely all of my ancestors had to behave similarly. In order to succeed in this country, my family had to give up their traditional language, they gave up their traditional religion, their traditional stories, almost everything. And by the time I was born, there was virtually nothing passed down to me. Um, and this painting is an expression of that. This is a painting of an American Guanyin. Guanyin is the Chinese goddess of mercy. And the painting was inspired by a story that my grandma told me. The last time I saw my grandma, I noticed a glass sculpture of Guanyin that I'd never seen before. And when I asked her about it, my grandma said that in the month-long journey it took to travel to immigrate from China to America, my grandma never put down that glass sculpture of Guanyin because she was afraid the fingers would break because they were so delicate. And in this painting of Guanyin, I visually shattered the entire image to talk about the loss of culture in my family. That even though my grandmother cared so much that she never put that sculpture down, by the time I was born, I never even was even told about this goddess. I wasn't told about anything because my family had to give up all of their old ways in order to succeed. But the good news is that even in my lifetime, society is beginning to shift, that there is a growing movement of decolonization, of the valuing of non-Western cultures to the same place as the West. And what that means for my family is we are slowly returning to our heritage. And in large part, it's a return to Buddhism. So my most recent paintings represent what's possible in this shift from assimilation to inclusion in this country. In recent years, my mother has devoted her life to Tibetan Buddhism, and I have followed her. And a lot of my most recent paintings are visual meditations as I'm working my way through these really difficult concepts in Buddhism. So this painting was created while I was working my way through the concept of emptiness in Buddhism. Um, the middle panel in this series was created while I was thinking about the concept of rebirth and reincarnation, and the painting on the right while I was thinking about the Buddhist concept of impermanence. This is a portrait of Khenchul Rinpoche. He is the Buddhist teacher for my mother and me. And behind him, there's a symbol that you find in Tibetan Buddhism that's the endless knot, and it represents the uniting of wisdom and compassion. And I painted it as a block of ice to talk about the fact that I think that wisdom is an organically occurring force. That we as a society are moving towards more wisdom, towards more justice, towards more inclusion. And this is just a specific sort of example in my family of the shift from assimilation to inclusion, but in the art world as a whole, it was largely a white straight man's game for a very long time. And in recent years, it's more important that diverse voices be shown. It's more important that we have diverse curators, diverse exhibitions. And so I think that it's a really exciting time in the arts now, in terms of this shift towards decolonization, towards the valuing of non-Western people and culture and ideas. So I hope that I've been able to enlighten you all on some of these topics of fine art and share a little bit about what I do. And I hope to see you all in a painting or drawing class one day in the future.